Hey friends, hey, welcome back to the channel. For those who are new here, my name is Aaronica Cole, and over here on Aaronica B Cole & Co, we center plus size bodies, of course, and today we are doing something a little bit different. We're talking about a highly requested topic for me, and that is pattern testing. When I talk about when I started sewing when I was super young, yes, but I did not really get active with sewing until I started testing patterns when I was in my 30s. For reference, I just turned 41, so shout out to the 40-year-olds out there still giving us body and face, okay? Anyway, now, pattern testing for me was something that was super important in my development as a sewist. Why? Because I had taken one class in my entire life, and that was when I was 13 years old. So when it comes to being self-taught, literally everything that I've learned for sewing has been self-taught, meaning that, yeah, all of the jargon, all of the skill set, all of that is something that I just happened to learn on the go as I was navigating life and sewing and homeschooling and. But I really feel like pattern testing is something that can be really helpful to you if you're learning to sew or if you're trying to learn new skills and you're just like, where do I start? Signing up for pattern tests is a really great way to do that and bridge the gap between the knowledge that you want versus the knowledge that you have while getting practical application in an environment that can be helpful. And so for me now, I'm on the other side of pattern tests, and there are some things that, one, I wish that I had known when I was a pattern tester, and two, there are some things that I wish that people knew as a pattern tester, or rather a pattern designer who is testing patterns. And I know that there's the popular question of how do I join pattern tests, or how can I get into your pattern test? So we're going to cover all of that, starting with, of course, how do you become a pattern tester? In becoming a pattern tester, it really depends on who you are testing patterns for. So for reference, I'm a designer with the brand Made for Mermaids. Now, generally speaking, we actually already have a pool of people who we choose from that are pattern testers. So how do you get into that pool? We actually did just a blanket like Facebook post within the Made for Mermaids and Patterns for Pirates group, just asking for people who wanted to be pattern testers. And then from there, we just drag and drop them into the group on Facebook. And that is literally as easy as it is for us. Now, typically, if we have a pattern that is going to go into testing, we just drop in a pre-test request, because for us, we do a pre-test, and the purpose of the pre-test, you know what, I'll get to that during another section. Now, if you're joining something like Petite Stitchery, they also have a very similar setup to Made for Mermaids and Patterns for Pirates, where there is a group where they pull from. Now, I also run a group that's on Facebook that is plus size pattern testers. So if we are specifically looking for plus size pattern testers, because we've got brands who are looking for to increase their size inclusivity, and of course, in order for us to do that, we have to make sure that those upper sizes are tested just like we need those lower sizes tested. Generally speaking, though, we typically will get a lot of the smaller sizes filled up, and then we're left without plus size testers. And so that's why we have that group. That's the plus size pattern testers. I will make sure that there's a link to that group in the caption as well. So there's also a lot of calls for pattern testers that are done on Instagram, because we've got a whole community of budding designers that is on Instagram, and we love to see it. Now, generally speaking, they will just put out their own calls where you will have to fill out like a document that is like a Google form, just giving the designer a little bit of information like your size, so that they can make sure that all sizes are represented, as well as your ability, so beginner, advanced, intermediate, etc., so that they know exactly what level of sewist is involved in their group, not so they can ostracize or not invite you because you're a beginner, but because when we're going through the test, we do want to make sure that we have a wide spread of people who are beginners on up to advanced, because everyone catches different things. And we do want to make sure that patterns can be read at the bare minimum by beginners for purposes of making sense. So generally speaking, again, these tests are done via either Instagram or Facebook. Now from there, if you are chosen to test, depending upon where the designer likes or feels most comfortable conducting their test, you can join a Discord group. It might be run on Facebook. It might be run via Slack. I've been in test groups where we've been on all of these different platforms. In my opinion, I don't have a favorite because if I'm being completely honest, testing for me is stressful, namely because of all the notifications. For me, notifications are extremely distracting, and they make it really hard for me to focus on the important things within the pattern test, to be completely honest. So as a tester, I'm looking for things that are from the designer. As far as updates, I'm also looking for pictures from other testers because for me, someone who is a visual learner, that is more helpful than written words, to be completely honest. I don't really read tutorials. I generally look at pictures and that's about it. But as someone who runs a test, being tagged in groups or having too many notifications come in can be really distracting, especially if you are looking for things at certain times of the week. I like to start my tests on a weekend and I like to end my test after a weekend is over, just simply because it'll give people who either work their day jobs from 9 to 5 an opportunity to have 2 weekends to work on the garment that they are sewing. As a standard practice, that is something that I feel like is helpful, especially because you never know what people's time constraints look like. And I feel like giving 4 kind of blank days is really helpful. So that is how you get into the pattern test. You simply have to apply, and based off of the designer's needs, they will choose what they want in the pattern test. So going through a pattern test can be a little tricky. So let's talk about some of the things that can be helpful while you're in the pattern test itself. Now, I'm going to be giving information from a designer standpoint, not from a tester standpoint, because not because I don't know what's helpful, but because I find that as a designer who conducts their tests in a certain way, I do feel like it's more helpful to set out what we're looking for, people who want to test patterns, as opposed to just kind of sticking with what pattern testers are looking for, because that may not always be conducive to the designer. So this again is just from my perspective. And so, yeah, that is it. So let's get into that, okay? So when we are putting our patterns in testing, generally speaking, there are multiple layers to testing. So I alluded to earlier on a pre-test. So the purpose of the pre-test, this is bare bones, as in we just got this pattern together, we just got this pattern designed, and we're just trying to see what each size range is looking like because we want to check the pieces, and that's it. We are not looking for feedback on construction. We're not looking for feedback on tutorials. We don't care about any of that because we're just trying to get the pattern pieces down, and that is it. That's it. So when we're doing a pretest, and I don't know if other designers do a pretest with other groups or if they just do the pretest with their sizing only. I know that with Made for Mermaids and Patterns for Pirates, we are looking specifically for pretesters of different size ranges to check to make sure waistbands are aligned, to make sure like rises match, that sort of thing. Now, whenever I do a pattern design, I will of course make it for myself, but because it's made for myself and drafted for me, I already know what kind of things that are standing out looking for. Those are generally going to be fine, right? That size range. So for me, I range from about a yellow on out to a red in Made for Mermaids. So I'm a little sunset situation. So those sizes are normally going to be fine. Why? Because those are the sizes that I use. So I've already tested them on my body. So what we're looking for in that pretest is really just taking a look at the pattern pieces and how they go together. For pre-testing, we ask for people who do not really actually need a tutorial and who can put them together because they understand order of construction for garments. That's it. It's not like a beginner versus intermediate versus advanced. You've got to be able to follow some very basic, very skeleton instructions because we're going to drop just high-level tutorial bits in there. Boom, that's it. Now, if you're like, hey girl, that's not really for me, I can't really, I need a little bit more in the tutorial, that's fine. The full test is what's for you. After we go through that pre-test, and depending upon how many changes we see we might need to make, we might ask pre-testers to do 1 or 2 different garments, but that's it. As a rule of thumb for me, when people are pre-testing for me, I do try to take a look at those garments that come in because I tend to pay particular attention to the amount of waste that I'm producing. So I will give advice on how to make those muslins or those toiles wearable because I don't want them to toss them away. I want them to actually have garments that they can actually wear. So for me, I give advice on different edits that can be made to make that garment go the distance, right? So they aren't over here like, dang, like I spent that time and now I don't have anything I can wear. For me, I want y'all to be able to wear stuff. Simple as that, right? Now, once we've done that pre-testing, made those edits, then we're going to put out a full call, meaning I don't want to say as many people because I got to be honest, if the test is too full, then it can be overwhelming, but we want about between 20 to 50 testers in that group. And yes, that feels like a wide range, but I say 50 because I've started to run my tests. If I'm producing a youth and adult pattern, I just want them all in one group. Otherwise, one group is going to get my attention while the other group does not. For those who are wondering why, it's because your girl is neurodivergent and too many notifications are going to make me go literally into a catatonic state and I'm just not going to check anything. So to make it easier for me, that is how I set it up. Now, within those groups, one of the things that we do is we encourage people to use #fit or #final, #edit. Why? Because those tags are searchable within Facebook. So if we're in the group and we want to take a look at everybody's fits and we see that it's #fit, then we can have a look at that. Now, whenever you're putting together and you're in the full test and everything like that, we really do want you to take a look at the tutorial and put it together from the tutorial. Not saying that you can't ask questions, but you going by the tutorial and then giving the feedback from the tutorial on either what steps got you hooked up or like tripped up, as well as whatever like edits you might still see needing to be made with pattern pieces, etc. That's what we want. We want the garment to be put together and then give the edits, etc. as after you go through it. The reason why is because we want to take a look at what you were able to put together with the tutorial versus the questions that you had, right? Because then we're going to deeper dive and have more questions for you about, was it the word structure? Were it the pattern pieces? Did it need to be reworded? That sort of thing. And I'm not going to put pictures out there with that first run of the tutorial because I want the tutorial to be out there versus you guys having to wait until I've had a chance to put the tutorial together because I don't only make patterns for a living. So I don't always have that time available for me. So once you're in that pattern test, you've put that garment together, you've given the feedback. Now, depending upon what your garment looks like, you might be cleared to go ahead and do your full or your final pictures from there, and boom, you're done. But if you're like, hey, these pieces aren't lining up and we can see that in the final, you can either make the edits so that it looks like it's in a final state, or you can opt to redo and wait until the designer comes back with their version 2 for that pattern test. So after we have gone through the first or the fit pictures, what we typically do is we go back, we take a look at each individual size. Now, I personally hand grade or I do hand an individual changes to each sizing. So it does take me a little bit longer, but then we go back and we make those edits based upon that. Now, if you're ever in any of my pattern tests, the way that I have my pattern test set up is I actually start a complete thread because I run them on Facebook. I have a thread that is for fit pictures. I have a thread that's for edits, and then I have a thread that is for finals. The final photos, we don't actually really need to be in the group. We just like for you to share them because you're proud of what you've done and we want to celebrate you. But I'm going off of all of the fits that are on that fit thread. I cannot go through all of the different posts that are in there because something will get lost in translation and I will miss something. I also, generally speaking, am not going through every individual post because it can become overwhelming and it'll take a lot longer for me to make those edits and get those files updated. Now, we also go through an edits thread, of course. Every tester is going to have edits, or actually most testers will have some kind of edit to offer, whether it is based off of the design, whether it's based off of the tutorial, whether it's based off the pattern pieces. What we are actually looking for in that edits thread are tutorial feedback as well as pattern piece feedback. We are not really looking for design feedback. And I don't want to sound mean when I say that, but when we come up with our designs in our head, we typically already know what we're looking for. We know what designs we're going for. We know what variations that we want. And we're going to design based off of that, not necessarily the design feedback that is given to us. Because if you want to hack it, by all means, hack it once you've done and turned in your final photos for that. Make it your own at that point in time. But up until then, we're just trying to nurture that design. And depending upon who the designer is, those distractions of design suggestions can completely halt the pattern test and the pattern production in and of itself. It's happened to me just because there was too much feedback and I was just like, never mind. Like, I'm not going to do it anymore. And I know that a lot of times it's because people get so excited about a design that they want to give their input. But most designers, again, already have in mind what they're doing and what they're designing for and are really trying to stay the course with that. Also, the other thing is that if we pay attention to everybody's design, who knows what that is going to come out. So we've got to stay focused on what it is that we've got going on before moving on to the next design. So again, those edits, be intentional about those edits. Make them so that they are either like unique, not saying that you have to go out and look for different things to offer edits on. But if someone has already said, oh, the waistband is only showing up on this layer, we don't need 5 additional people to say the same thing. We're going through literally to check off that we have made the edits or to dive deeper and ask some more questions about it. So the more that we see the same edit, the less likely we are to pay attention to the edits. I'm not going to lie, because it just becomes like, oh, everyone is saying the same thing. And then we can miss out on things that actually matter. And I know it's like, Aaronica, well, everyone should just be reading all the things. Sure. If this is what we did as a 9-to-5 job, again, this is not what I do for my full-time job, for my full-time position. So this is, what we try to do in our spare time. And many of us as designers, we don't spend all day doing that because we also have to make the pattern, we have to make the edits, then we have to film, we have to take photos. So there's a lot that's involved with it. So we can't just spend all the time going through Facebook groups or Instagram threads or any of that. It's a waste of time. And we are trying to get those files edited so that you can get back to sewing these really dope garments. So just that bit of information there. And then when it comes time to taking final photos, the best marketing, especially if you either love a design, love a designer, love a brand, the best thing that you can do for us is to make something that you would legit wear, take finals of it, and share it, right? And I say with intention, make the things that you legit want to wear because you look different in the garments that you make and you legit love versus the garments that we have asked you to make and you may or may not love, right? Like your face glows, you look so happy, and then you're likely to remake it, rewear it, share it even more because one, you're excited about this make that you have on your body and you're just like, oh man, look at what I made. It makes me feel so beautiful while I'm wearing it. And that is what we want. As designers, that is exactly the feeling that we are trying to foster and have you replicate. We want you feeling amazing in these garments that you have made. So make what you would normally wear. That's it. Use the fabrics that you would normally wear. Make the variations that you would normally wear. Why? Because at the end of the day, as a designer, in order for us to make it kind of worth our while, we have to make sales. You know what I mean? Like we've got to make those sales because we've got to pay for the software that we're using, the time that it takes for us to do all of the changes and everything like that. And if I'm being honest, a lot of us are measuring our success by how much money that we have made. So if we aren't making much, then it doesn't feel like it's worth our time. So we're less likely to produce more garments. And if you're like, you know what, I really love this designer's aesthetic, what better way to show support than actually making and sharing things that they have designed? So that is something that really, really helps us. We do, of course, ask you to quote unquote spam, but in that, I will say that yes, it's necessary, right? Because spamming is simply sharing your make. What I will say is that I know for me, One, I want to make sure everyone is signed up for our affiliate program because I want you to be paid for sharing. So if you have shared on Instagram, make sure that affiliate link is in your bio. So that way you can get paid when people click that link in their bio because they want to replicate or they want to make their own version of something that they've seen you make. So utilize your affiliate links. For me, in every test that I run, I make that announcement and I make that reminder. Please make sure that you are part of our affiliate program so that way you can be paid when people are clicking your links because they have been inspired by something that you have made. Okay. That for me is a big thing. I want you to be paid based off of what you have made. Seriously. Yeah. The other thing is share when it feels good. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you've taken photos or, share in a unique way that makes sense for you, whether it is making a reel of your construction process or maybe talking about your pattern. I mean, not your pattern, but your fabric choices that you made and why you chose them, that sort of thing. Like, share a story behind that make. Why did you make it out of that? Why did you choose that view? How does it make you feel when you wear it? These are all things I know that for me as a person matter, but also as a designer matter, and also as someone who has done a lot of the pattern tests and has been a highly sought after pattern tester because when I do share, I share the things that matter to me most about the make, whether it is in that I finally had a pattern that I could use a fabric that I bought for, or I finally feel amazing in something that I've made, or, I have an outfit now to wear to insert whatever, event that I might have coming up. Make it personal. You know what I mean? The more personal that you make these stories about your makes and that sort of thing, I think that it's the higher level of success that you'll have with your affiliate links, with your shares, engagement, etc. How do we choose our pattern testers? I don't want to say something like, oh, it's an equal opportunity. Because in truth, it might not be. Because if you have joined pattern tests and you have not produced the garment and you keep joining and you keep not producing the garment, then we're not going to choose you. And that is literally just like a survival of the fittest type of thing. But it is not like a cool kids club or anything like that. Like, we choose normally based upon the sizes that we need. So if you're in those upper or lower sizes that do not have a whole lot of representation, chances are you will get chosen. Simple as that. My final message is that if you are ever like, Aaronica, please let me join your pattern test. All you have to do is shoot me a message on a social media outlet. You can't really message in YouTube, so obviously not here. But definitely slide into my DMs if you're like, hey girl, I just love your aesthetic. One, I'm always accepting compliments, so thank you. But also just, let me know that you're interested because I'm always looking for testers that are willing to be mindful of due dates as well as giving me grace as I run these tests because if I'm being completely honest, and this is personal, it is very triggering for me to have pattern tests. I do not like following up with people for missing photos. Also, I do end up feeling a little like I'm putting myself out there when I put these designs out there because it is kind of hard for me. And I know that for me, it gets really triggering when I have too many notifications, too many tags, that sort of thing. So I'm always struggling through testing, literally at all times. And I say that as I'm in the middle of a full test right now. So, if you're ever like, yes, we love giving grace, definitely hit me up and join my pattern tests. So with that, that is it for this video. If you do have more specific questions about pattern testing and that sort of thing, definitely feel free to drop a comment below because I love helping. And also, I love having dope testers that wear these garments proudly. Literally nothing is better marketing than that. And with that, make sure that you have liked this video, that you have dropped me a little comment, hearted something, shared it, as well as turned on the bell because I already know that you're a subscriber. So that way you're notified of any time we have new videos, of when I premiere new videos, and when I go live. And with that, I will catch you all on the next video, and happy sewing.